everybody, it's your girl Annette J. Morris, owner of Go Getter CEO, and also the host of the Mind series. You know, the Mind TV series, every week we are talking about moving in new directions, and I'm going to have a new entrepreneur on for you all every week, dynamic entrepreneur to tell you their life's journey, their entrepreneurship journey, and how their entrepreneurship journey helped them to move their lives in new directions. So none other this week, we have a very, very, very intriguing guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you who he is and what are the things that he's doing. Nelson, take it away.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Really, really appreciate this opportunity. So I'm Dr. Nelson Zunlame. I am trained as a counseling psychologist, but more recently went out full time to focus on entrepreneurship, and specifically my company Liberate the Block, which focuses on culturally centered mental wellness and educational empowerment resources and tools to help students of color or BIPOC students thrive, not just survive in graduate school and in undergraduate school.
That is pretty awesome. So how long have you, because that's near and dear to my heart. Everybody that knows me knows that I am a mental health therapist. So I have a master's in mental health therapy, mental health counseling rather, and transitioned into full-time entrepreneurship 11 years ago. How was that transition for you, transitioning from employment to full-time entrepreneurship? How did that go for you? And what made you make that decision to do that?
Yeah, so it was a number of factors. I actually started my company during the pandemic. So this was 2022. And at that time, I was doing my dissertation and internship for my doctorate. And I was seeing what was going on in the world, right? Breonna Taylor was murdered, George Floyd, so many others. And I was trying to figure out, how I can translate my research, which is in a similar area, to more practical means. Right. And so from there, I published my first book, which is called Letters to My Sisters and Brothers, Practical Advice to Successfully Navigate Academia as a Student of Color, to translate that work. And so fast forward, finished my internship, got a full-time tenure track faculty position at the University of Kentucky, but still seeing the same struggles that I dealt with as a student, right? So struggling to find mentorship, struggling, with mental health and all that kind of stuff in my students. And, I kind of just took a leap of faith and said, you know what, I feel like I can do this full time. And I feel like I can better serve my communities by doing this full time than staying in a system that I know is set up for us in many ways to fail. And so that was kind of how I made that decision.
Understood, because that's one of the reasons, like I try to explain it to a lot of people when they ask me, like, what was my rationale or reason for leaving, being a full-time therapist, so and so forth. So I feel like it's a little, I don't know how to politically correct say this or whatever, but it's not really servicing African Americans adequately. And one of the experiences that I had, I was a program manager, so I ran this mental health rehab agency in New Orleans. And, most of the psychiatrists in Louisiana, I don't know if it's like this where you are, but most of them are old Caucasian males, right? That don't understand the Black experience at all. And there was a lady that was a client of the agency, and she had never been diagnosed with depression, never anything, right? But what happened was she had lost her job. And she was really depressed because she was having a hard time feeding her kids, right? So that's a natural depression for a mother to be unable to feed her kids. And so the psychiatrist was like, well, she's clinically depressed, and he gave her all of these medications and prescriptions. And I was like, well, how did you come to that conclusion? I said, did you read the assessment on her to understand what she's going through right now? Like, she's unable to feed her kids. He was like, well, I feel like she's clinically depressed and she needs to take these meds. I was like, because he really doesn't understand what it's like to be poor and unable to feed your kids, because he's never had that circumstance, right? So I'm like, this is more circumstantial than clinical, but couldn't get him to understand that. And so I saw a lot of that in our profession, unfortunately, for our kids and kids of color and all of this or whatever, because the people that are ultimately the ones that can make the final decisions are not people that share our experiences.
Right.
So 100%. Did you see a lot of that in the field as well?
Yes, I did. And I saw that a lot throughout my undergrad training and my graduate training. both of which were at Indiana University, right? And so a predominantly white or historically white institution. And, you know, talking about Black students historically, for like the last maybe 15, 20 years or so, their Black student population has hovered at 4.4%. Right. So it's a very small, you know, they've done all this kind of stuff to try to recruit and retain, but students are having really bad experiences there. Mental health in particular, you know, the training from what I saw wasn't adequate enough to really service the needs of the students. Right. And so a lot of my research and clinical work focused on Black students, students of color, you know, mental wellness. And so I essentially just took that research and turned it into a business because, like you were saying, you're working with certain providers who don't have the lived experience or don't have the training, and they don't know how to work with, you know, people from our communities. They don't know how to talk to us. They don't know anything really about us. And this is really problematic, right? And so much so I was a provider working in those systems, and I've worked in, you know, different universities, University of Maryland, University of Kentucky, Indiana University, and some other places. And, you know, people just don't really get it. And people are having bad experiences that I felt uncomfortable in certain situations, even recommending fellow students or other people to go and get services, because I could tell from my standpoint that these weren't adequate services, right?
Correct.
And so you know, to me, I put it on myself to say, okay, well, I feel like I can do a better job. Let me go ahead and do that and create, you know, books. We do online courses. We're building a network of providers and mentors and things like that, right? To have that culturally centered or culturally grounded mental health and education that our communities desperately need, right? And the thing that I'll add here briefly is that a recent, you know, study was done to show that between it was 2010 and 2020, Black enrollment at universities across the U.S. have been down about 17%, and at about 500 universities, that was down 50%, right? And so we know that this has to do with recruitment, retention, and graduation, but a lot of this has to do with the fact that these students and these community members do not feel seen, heard, and valued in the mental health, in the education space, right? And so we're really trying to reinvent education and mental wellness to center students of color, people of color, so that they get the care that they desperately need.
Okay, and that's phenomenal. So you actually work with leadership at the schools, or you work directly with the students? And if so, like whoever the population is, how does your program help them?
Yeah, great question. So we do both. So we work directly one-on-one and in groups with students, but we also do consultation work and trainings and workshops with the universities to help them better create an environment for those students to thrive. Right. And so, so we have consultation services, we have workshops on, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also how to create an environment that seems welcoming to those students, right? And one basic example of that is if you go on campus to most of the counseling centers, you know, you go in there, all the pictures are of white people, right? There's not a welcoming space. It's not like, you know, beyond the personnel, right? And personnel is important, but I think universities forget that, you know, that place doesn't feel like a safe place to us, right? And we know the statistics, we know, you know, the issues in our program. And so even basic stuff like that. And then in addition to that, you know, how do we train the staff? How do we train the faculty to respond better to students, to not stigmatize them or pathologize them simply because their lived experiences are different than maybe the white students that they're used to working with?
Okay, and that's pretty awesome, because and the reason why I asked about leadership, because I know a lot of times I'll use, for example, when I was an actual therapist, my population was working with kids, right? And the Medicaid system here only allowed you to, at that time, work directly with the kids to provide the counseling services and XYZ. And so at the time when I was working, and I came back to my boss one day and I said, you know what, I'm realizing that the kid is really not the problem. It's the parents that's the problem. I was like, I was like, it's really not the kid. So I really feel like it is counterproductive to continue to counsel this kid and then send him back into the same environment without, you know, talking to the mom and working with the mom. And she kept saying, well, we don't get paid to work with the parents, you know, we can only work with the children. And I was like, this is horrible, because we teaching them different skills, but not even like articulating that or communicating that with the parents to say, this is what we're teaching them, and this is how you can further assist them XYZ or whatever, because if you teach them on this hand when you're at home and we teach them when we in therapy services with them, then I feel like it would be more impactful. And she was like, well, no, we don't get paid to work with the parents. We can only work with the children. And I was like, that's not productive at all. And so that's what made me ask, like, because I know a lot of times, like, you can work with the students XYZ, but if we're not getting to like the top level, the leadership of the universities, and helping them to realize, like, your settings is not, conducive with what we need as African American students. It's not welcoming, because if we come to the counseling center and there's all, Caucasian staff and all Caucasian pictures, it just makes it feel like we're not welcome in this setting, right? So just kind of bringing that to their attention. And one of the things that I'm realizing is that they just really don't know. Exactly. They don't realize, like, that what it feels like to us. They don't realize, like, the space is not welcoming, and they're not, whatever it is, addressing the needs that we have so that we can be successful students or successful employees or whatever that may be. So that's what made me ask that. But I am actually glad that you are doing that. How many schools are you partnered with now, working with the students? Are you only at the collegiate level, or are you doing that with high schools? Who are you working with?
Yeah, great question. So I just started doing full time in 2021 after I quit my job. And so, we're right now working with different universities to get multi-year contracts. And so since those are in place, I can't mention the universities, but we are in conversations with several different universities, some in the Midwest, some on the East Coast. And then I'm also hoping to maybe get another university back out on the West Coast as well, to try to really test this model, right? And so to your point, we're trying to wrap around services, right? It's really important that we're not just working with the students, right? That we're working with the faculty and the leadership. And, we're incorporating community members and families as much as we possibly can. And so because we have a deliberate approach, we're trying to be very strategic in how we do it. And so one example, right, is our Black academic encouragement and empowerment intervention, which was the topic of my dissertation, in which Black students read and wrote encouragement letters and empowerment letters to one another based on issues that they faced and successfully navigated, right? And so the research showed that actually led to a decrease in depression for Black students, right? And so we're now partnering with different universities on how do we turn this into a fun and engaging intervention or, event on campus, right? So maybe we're going to have, spoken word night where these are going to be read, or maybe we're going to, so it's more of like a tailored approach that we work with these universities. I mean, to answer your other question regarding age groups. So right now, we are focused on the collegiate level because that's where our team's expertise is in. So we have over 35 years of experience working directly on university of campuses with students of color. But we also want to work in the future as we build this company, because, we're wanting to be around for a very long time. We want to start working with kids, right? Because we know that that's where it starts. And this is really personal to me because, so my family is originally from Benin, West Africa. I was born and raised here. States. We grew up in public housing and things like that. But when you were talking about, the students' experience, the kids' experience earlier, it reminded me of my experience growing up in, segregated and really white Indiana. And in fourth grade, my teacher, that was a white woman, I actually got suspended 10 different times. That teacher, and I wasn't doing anything different than my white peers. And my mom would come to the school and she would say, why don't you just switch the teachers? Or why, like, he's never had issues before. I've never had issues since, right? And so, like, I was taken out of school, put on half days and all this kind of stuff. And it really put a detriment on my education. I was starting to fall behind in reading and math. Luckily, things figured out. But for that exact reason, we want to work with the kids and the teachers at a younger level. And so hopefully, right, we can have these services that follow people from K-12 all the way into their career, right? And so that's how we're building the brand.
Okay, and that's awesome. And that was the next question that I wanted to ask you, because I know that you say you're a son of immigrants, you have immigrant parents. How has your education, because you've gone on to secure a doctorate degree, and now you have your own business, how has the education and the business help to move your life in different directions, or move your life in new directions from that of your parents' experience?
Yeah, great question. So, as I mentioned, growing up in public housing, right, we were on food stamps. We faced homelessness for a while. We lived in women's shelters and things like that. It was a struggle. We moved like 7 different times, when I was growing up. really destabilizing kind of environment. However, right, my parents always made sure that education, right, just always doing my best to excel in that way. And so now that I have, right, my doctorate, now that I have my own business, my life is tremendously different. My family's life is tremendously different, right? And so generational wealth is incredibly important, not just to me, but making sure that all of our people in our communities are free, right? And so another part of that is we really want to start working with adults as well to start teaching more about entrepreneurship, which is why I love, just being here today, to eradicate things like the racial wealth gap and eradicate all that kind of stuff and really build that legacy, right? Because when we work together strategically and help each other grow, right, that's how we're able to really, as I like to say, lift as we climb, right? And so my family life, I feel like, has been elevated so much, but then I also go back to the same hoods, that I grew up in, and I see how some folks haven't really changed, right? And that really bothers me, right? Because it's like, I feel like, and somewhat of survivor's guilt, like I feel like I got out, right? But I know a lot of friends and peers that, joined gangs, didn't graduate high school, et cetera, et cetera. And so we really want to go back to those places and help, really lift people into better circumstances with our products and with our services.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and we have a lot of shared experiences because I was born and raised in public housing in New Orleans, Louisiana as well. However, my mom was a single mom and, raised us to be, and that's one of the things as well. So, I feel like entrepreneurship has very, very much been the key to breaking generational poverty, because it allows you to generate so much more revenue than if you were to work on any job, right? So I can remember, like, the last job that I had, I was a supervisor of a social service agency with 2 college degrees and only had a salary of $40,000 with 2 degrees, and so, like $40,000, you really not doing anything that you want. You're barely meeting all of your needs, right? So, I mean, you're paying bills and you living and working to pay bills, and that's it. And I know that I had a different life that I wanted that could not be accomplished by that particular salary or that, and when you're working for somebody, there's always a salary cap. And so just being able to move beyond having a salary cap and moving beyond having those low paying salaries, because I know even it doesn't matter where I went, even if I'm going in private practice, I've known quite a few of my classmates to transition into private practice and they're still they still haven't crossed the 6-figure threshold, so again, they're still not really living a life that they want to live, but they've sacrificed so many years in school and doing all the things or whatever, because that's the American dream. They tell us, go to school, go to college, get your degrees, get a job, and you just struggle and keep doing that. And I just felt like, life is way more than working and paying bills. So, yeah. So I commend,
Well, I was just going to say, I was just like that freedom piece of being an entrepreneur, right? Like people, like you're speaking to, I think people don't necessarily understand, like you were saying, like go to school, get a job, work for somebody else, right? But that freedom you have to, work when you want to, do the kind of work you want, how you want to do it, right? And particularly, for those of us who are close to our communities that are coming from systems that don't get us, right? Like us stepping out and being able to do this in this way also has a better product and a better connection to the goals that we have, right? And so
absolutely
love everything that you're sharing.
Absolutely. So what are some of the goals that you have now that you're an entrepreneur and you have not a little more freedom, but you have a lot more freedom? So what are some of the goals that you have that you want to accomplish and that you can actually leverage your business to support in your personal life? What are some of those things?
Yeah. So thankfully, so I'm married now. Thankfully, my wife and I own a house together, which is great. And so we're actually hoping to use some of the money and the revenue from the business to get into other ventures, right? And so we want to get into real estate, right? We want to get into, just other markets that open up those multiple streams of income. Again, ourselves, right? But I got nieces and nephews, I got cousins and things like that. And so the more that I'm learning, the more I'm always able to give back, not just to the company, but to my communities in that way. And just learn as much as I can to help, right, really level the playing field, right? So a big thing for us at LTB is, we want you to be able to get a university level education for a fraction of the price, right? And so example that I have of that is our Developing a Graduate School Thrive mindset, which essentially takes everything that I did and kind of learned and struggled, to be successful, right? But I'm atypical in that I graduated 100% debt free. I actually left graduate school with more money than I came in with. I got a job during a pandemic when there weren't really many jobs, right? But to me, it was important to turn that into a course that teaches people how to do that. So it's a 2-week self-paced course, right? It's $47. It's a monthly subscription because we're constantly adding value to that. But I would argue, say that it's way more useful to students than, going and enrolling in a class and paying $3,000 or $1,000 a credit, right? It's all practical. It's all self-paced, right? And so that's what we're really trying to do, is build this ecosystem of courses, of books, of providers, so that we can have good quality, culturally grounded services and products, but aren't going to cost us so much money, right? And lead to that, the disparities in student debt and mental health debt, all these issues, right? And so we're trying to kind of set a new model, and then also encourage community members or other people to learn from us and then go replicate that in your own way, right? Like I know what I know, but I don't know what you know, right? And so if you can take similar concepts and go start your own business on the same framework, we're happy to help you do that, right? Because we're not free until we're all free.
Absolutely. I love how you just said that. Love how you just put that, especially talking about the multiple streams of income. So that's actually my God-given gift, to be able to take anybody's business and look at it and tell them how they can generate multiple streams of income in there, right? So I wrote a book in 2015 called Live Free, Creating the Streams to Live Your Dreams. Then wrote another one that was specifically to generating 100K about 2 years ago, and that one actually was featured in Yahoo Finance. But that's my thing. Like, in other words, I tell my clients, at least build that business up till it has at least 5 streams of revenue, right? So technically, I believe one should always go back into the business. You have to keep on funding that business, right, so that it can sustain. Another one should be philanthropic. So I do feel like God puts us in position so that we can always give back to those that are less fortunate, right? Like you said, when we return back to the block or the communities that we came from, there are still people that are stuck there, right? And they don't see how to get out, right? So give back to nonprofits, give back to causes that you believe in. But I feel like we should always be giving back. And another one should be for responsibilities, naturally, your bills. It has to take care of your bills, your overhead, whatever that is. Another stream of revenue should be for entertainment purposes, right? So whatever you want to do outside of the things that you have to do, the things that you want to do. So no matter if it's traveling or shopping or, taking care of your nieces and nephews, whatever that is, that should come under the wants. And the fifth one should be investing, like you say, going into real estate and opening up to other streams of revenue, some streams of revenue that don't require you to work. So real estate, I mean, once you purchase a house and put somebody in it, you're not managing that all the time, right? You're just making sure you get paid your rent, once a month, whatever it is. So it doesn't require you physically to compromise your physical health or mental well-being so that you can, take care of that or whatever, right? So investing it in somewhere where that money will make work as hard for you as you did for it. And I totally believe in that. So when you say multiple streams of income in real estate, I'm like, yeah, I'm all with it. Because we definitely have to teach that to more people. And one of the things that I realize is, like, when we're talking to people from the communities where we're from, they feel like it's far-fetched until they see somebody like us that they knew was in the trenches with them that's actually doing it. And then we can get their attention better than somebody that's on TV, that's a celebrity that made it big, because they're like, oh, they were probably always rich, whatever it is. But when they know we started from the same place as them, we're more, in tune to them or whatever, because they're like, okay, well, we started from the same playground or the same, basketball court, whatever it is. So they're prone to listen to us more than they would somebody that's, that they consider high in stature, or celebrity, that's somebody that's on TV.
100%. Yeah. I agree.
Absolutely. You want to tell them anything more about Liberating the Block before we tell them how to follow you?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, again, thank you for this opportunity. And at Liberate the Block, or LTB for short, right, we really are not just passionate about this, right, but this is something, all of our products are evidence-based, they're well-researched. Myself and our team of psychologists and other professionals, right, like, these are really good services and these are really good products, but we want to invite, folks to come liberate the block with us, right? And so in the near future, we're going to be coming out with podcasts. podcast. We're going to be coming out with documentaries and other types of, ways in which we not only can showcase, right, other people's stories, really powerful stories that have not been told, right? Black women's experiences in the academy, right? Just all these things that really don't get enough attention, but we really want to hear from people what they want, right? We don't want to just put out content that we feel like is what people need. We really want people to come and build this with us, right? So we really see this as a movement, right? I envision in the, hopefully not too distant future, right, that we have actual locations, right? You're mentioning giving back, right? We are in the process of creating a nonprofit subsidiary. And so I envision back to my hood where I'm from in South Bend, Indiana, and being able to have a location where students from where I grew up can go for free and get that quality education and get our books and things like that. So I just say, please, right, if you want to connect with us, you can just go to liberateTheBlock.com. If you want to reach me personally, my email is nelson@liberateTheBlock.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, right? So follow, we're going to be coming up with a YouTube channel out here soon. So, we're trying to do it really big, but again, we really want and need as many people to have this journey or come along this journey with us.
Yes, that's awesome. And also, I just want to kind of drop a bug to you that I know that you are developing a university and adding value to it. And so one of the things that me and a couple of my mastermind sisters are doing is utilizing each other's knowledge and putting it on our own platform. So I have what's called Go Getter University. One of my mastermind sisters, she does business credit. And another one does marketing and branding, right? So we are putting our courses on each other's platforms. That way I don't have, because people will come to your platform and they have so much more knowledge, and as opposed to you trying to figure out how to learn it and all of this, just establishing partnerships and putting each other's courses on a platform so that we are all helping the community that you want to help, right? So it helps us to help other people. So again,
like to your point, there's so much wealth of knowledge, right, in our communities, but we need to create the platforms and direct people to it, right, so that money stays with us too, right? And that we're able to leverage that to build our communities back up and to really have that generational wealth for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
And so I love what you're doing here and just the communities that you're building, and just happy to be a part of this journey. And it's just so many wonderful Black folks, like entrepreneurs out here, and I'm inspired by y'all. So I'm just happy to be a part of this.
Well, I thank you so much for joining us this week. Again, leave your website so that people can, because I don't want them to have gotten mixed up in the message. Tell your website again, and so that they can stay following you, because I want them to stay connected to the movement that you are creating.
Yeah, so it's www.liberateTheBlock.com.
Okay, awesome. Y'all got that? All right. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Nelson, for joining us this week. You all that were tuned in, next week, same time, same place, we'll be back with a new entrepreneur talking about how their entrepreneurship journey and their experiences in life has helped them to move their life in new directions. Until next week, y'all have a great one. Bye-bye.